Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am the Poverty Princess. As promised, my second video for today, which I feel is an important video because it touches on the welfare system, specifically Medicaid, food stamps, TANF, or what used to be called back in the day, public assistance, and even Section 8 briefly. All of these programs kind of fall in the category of what's called a safety net. Originally, when these programs were started, they were to help low-income people, people who maybe ran out of unemployment benefits, people who lost their job to illness, so that their families were taken care of. And the idea behind them was a good idea. It was never meant for families to raise generation after generation of, kids and that on it. How that came to be, I guess, just a lax system. I don't really know. I can't answer for that. I do know that my mom worked a lot when I was a little girl. Her and my father divorced by the time I was in kindergarten. And my father was a gambler. My father was a womanizer. So my mother divorced him based on those two issues alone. I didn't realize until I was in my late 20s, early 30s, though, that the reason my mother never got child support from me when I was growing up or had any kind of medical coverage for me was that apparently when she signed divorce papers with my father, as I said, my mother instituted the divorce. They were separated for a while. Apparently my mother, just being so hurt and so angry, told him she wanted nothing from him and said if she didn't take anything from him, she wanted him to stay away from me. So I guess my father at the time considered that a win-win. And yeah, that was the agreement that they got into. Of course, years later, when she just didn't have the money to take me to the doctor when I needed to go and things, it kind of bit her in the face. Why she never applied for, medical coverage for me through public assistance, I will never know. I didn't even know what welfare was until my grandmother and grandfather were separated. My grandfather was living with his son, therefore my grandmother's Social Security check got cut really bad. My mother was going through cancer treatment at the time, so my mom couldn't work. So we were in a bind, money-wise. And this was right around the time, I want to say, before I was legally old enough to start working after school through the, there was a special program. It kind of was partnered with the Summer Youth Employment Training Program, but this was for after school. I wasn't quite 14 yet. So I wasn't old enough yet to do that, so I started babysitting. I started doing errands for all the old ladies in my apartment building, and I came to realize early on that money is important. Having it was important. So by the time I was 14, and I actually had several part-time jobs, not just babysitting. One night a week I was a floor lady. On Sundays I used to clean hotels up in the Poconos. I used to work after school, scraping gum off of desks and mopping floors and things like that. I worked during the summer through that summer program, on top of, all the other things I just mentioned. So I always had money. So at 14, I was able to buy my own clothes, do my own laundry, buy my own food, pretty much very self-sufficient at 14. And I was proud of that. And also, I figured I was giving my mother and my grandparents a break, not having to go to them for something, especially when I knew they didn't have it, you know. And back then, the minimum wage was very low. And when my mom was going through the cancer treatment and that, she didn't work for months. And the one thing I hated to do was go to my grandparents because I felt that was not their job, you know. So, like, I grew up in that sense not knowing what welfare was until when my grandfather and grandmother wound up living at separate addresses. And then I found out what food stamps were and that. But again, and my mother did not apply for a medical card for me, and I never understood why. You know, I never got it. So, I did not grow up in that environment. I wasn't a product of a family that, you know, did that their whole life. No. And I did work a lot as a teenager and even into my early 20s. With my oldest son, I worked up until I was, I want to say, 4 months, 5 months. And then I wound up on cash assistance when I was pregnant with him. And they used to give you $50 every 2 weeks, which, nothing, really. When my son was born, I didn't have a crib for him. There was no baby shower, no crib, nothing. The godparents got me baby clothes and diapers and things like that because I just didn't have the money to, and neither did my family. My son didn't have a crib. My son slept the first 2 weeks of his life on a homemade mattress in a long laundry basket. Right hand, kid you not. Then I got him a portable crib from something called Popular Club. It was set up the way like Finger Hut is, you know, where you paid so much for the things that you ordered. So that was how I got my first crib, Popular Club. And it was good because it had wheels and you could move it around. I like that about it. So, to be on cash assistance meant that if you wanted to go on your own, odds are you needed to apply for Section 8. So back in '86 when my son was born, I went and did just that. And I applied for Section 8. I was getting WIC. When you have all these programs together helping you, that is your safety net. And all is good until your children get older and the money doesn't stretch as it may have when they were younger, and you start realizing, like, okay, I need more money, I need to go back to work. And then when you do start earning a paycheck, rug is pulled right out from under you. And that is what I dislike about the welfare system. Instead of, well, first of all, I do not see why they cannot give people a 30-day grace period when they first start a job. How often has it not happened to people that, you know, they apply for a job, try it, and maybe find out honestly that they're just not good at it. And they realize that, and a company lets them go because they're not really suited for that particular job. Well, the only way you find out is by trying. But if you're in that system, you already know the coming month when you're not going to have a paycheck. Well, you're going to have less food stamps. You have to figure out where you're coming up with the extra rent money, this and that. So I never understood why they can't give people a 30-day grace period, because sometimes jobs just don't work out. things happen that aren't a person's fault. If you're just not good at a job, you're not good at a job. I mean, Ronnie is good at, certain jobs and not good at others. And a fast-paced assembly line, like the one job he had, he lasted 3 days at. No, he was not good at that. But now he did a similar job where, he was able to go around pretty much on his own and scan things with American Eagle, and he was fine with that. His rate was good. Not everybody is good at, the same job. He enjoyed food prep in personal care homes, dietary aid, food prep and that. So he really liked that and enjoyed that. Other people might be like, terrible at something like that, but he liked it. He got the hang of it quick and he enjoyed it. So everybody is good at different things. There's no taking anything like that into account, though, with the Department of Welfare. Oh, God, no. So when a person starts working and they report it, they basically go by your gross income for a month, and this is when the fun starts. I used to call it earn a nickel, get docked a quarter. So the first to go usually is your food stamps, right off the bat. Then sometimes medical assistance comes into play, but usually it's your food stamps. If you're receiving cash assistance, that's next. If not, then it's Section 8. And your rent will go up. And when all is said and done, you can look at what you've grossed for a month, what you were getting before you started working, and then add up the differences of what you are expected to make up now because you're working, and guess what? Oftentimes, you're short. You're short. And it's either a matter of, paying the extra rent that you're supposed to pay, or buying food that you need to buy now that you have less stamps, or maybe, child care payment that you didn't have to pay before, now you have to pay. And that's what I mean by pulling the rug out from under people. It's not a gradual thing. It all hits you at once. Everybody gets their hands in that pie and starts cutting a piece. And you're left with this, And that's why I said, I hate that about the way they do things with welfare and public assistance, that there should be a grace period. And I also believe that transitioning people off of welfare into self-sufficiency should be a tapered down system. Whereas, okay, maybe adjust your food stamps a small amount, maybe adjust your rent a small amount, and then taper it down the longer you're working. So it's gradual. But when you just pull that rug out from under people and scare them into oblivion, because now they realize, okay, I was paying $120, now I got to pay $475 for rent, I have to come up with $300 now extra for groceries, plus, now I have to pay part of the child care thing and this and that. And when they sit and figure everything out in a budget, they don't have that money. But yet, that system thinks that they do. That's how they help people on the road to self-sufficiency. It's a crappy system. And that's why I call it a trap. Because oftentimes when people with the best of intentions want to get off of it and see where it hurts them more than actually helps them, that's when they'll go back on it and figure, no, it's not paying me to go out the door. You're cutting my throat when they do so. And if the government wants to truly get people off of welfare and on a path to self-sufficiency, they need to have a different approach with it. There should be a grace period, and it should be a gradual step down, trickle down system of easing people into self-sufficiency. Another thing I used to get so irritated with caseworkers for was they would fail to send you important letters. And what happened with me when my boys were young, it was an odd month. I wound up with 5 paychecks. So I had 2 papers that time I dropped off at the window of the welfare office. 4 of my pay stubs were on one sheet of paper, and the last one was on a separate sheet. Whatever happened to them after that, I have no control over. I turned them over to them. So apparently, my caseworker misplaced that other paper with my last pay stub on. About 2 months down the road, I get this notice that I was overpaid, and they're docking me $200 and some worth of food stamps. I'm calling them up like, what the hell's going on? I failed to report a paycheck. What are you talking about? I failed to report a paycheck. And and this and that. I'm like, no, I photocopied all of my pay stubs. Well, lo and behold, cleaning company cleaning the offices found the paper somehow way under the caseworker's desk, put it on his desk since they found it by his desk, and he realized he made a mistake. But I was the one getting penalized for it. So I decided, oh no. I appealed that decision. I took a day off of work. I went up to Full Spare. It was an informal, hearing meeting. And the caseworker is apologizing to me, but I'm still going to have to pay that back. And I said, well, that's a crock of shit, I said. You made the mistake. Not my fault. You dropped a paper, misplaced a paper. Where do you get off thinking that that is fair? That you're going to penalize me and my kids for your mistake? I know it's not intentional, but the fact of the matter is, you made the mistake, not me. I didn't do anything fraudulent. So where do you get off, punishing me for your mistake? I said, why do you even tell people that they have the right to appeal these decisions? I said, when in the end the caseworkers are always right and the clients are wrong, and you're going to get screwed anyway. So when I left that meeting that day, hearing, I said, well, I'm going to have a talk with a friend of mine at the newspaper. I said, because I bet you a lot of people don't know, I said, how grimy this welfare system is. So about a week later, I get a letter. They were taking $25 every month out of my food stamps. They did it 1 month, and it was it. They never took the rest. Interesting. But, like I said, I was supposed to get penalized for a mistake that a caseworker did? No. That's wrong. Very wrong. I don't know if the system is still like that, and I'm sure I'm not the only person where, a caseworker made a big mistake, even if it was accidental. I don't think that the client should pay for your mistake. What happened to responsibility? Afraid you're going to lose your cushy government job? I don't know. And, Section 8 in and of itself, was a good program until the situation with my oldest son. My oldest son was expecting his first child at 16 going on 17. My mom helped him and his girlfriend, his wife now, get an apartment. I had no room for her and a baby. So when my son got into some trouble in the ALC, and Shivarella, the judge, who I talked about in my other video, when he was in Camp Adams for a few months, juvenile probation brought up the fact that my son did not live with me. And I said, I have a small 3-bedroom apartment. I said, it's not just my son anymore, it's a package deal. There's a baby on the way. So I said, I just don't have the room for, a baby and her. I said, so him having his own apartment is, beneficial. It's a good thing for him. And, like at one point, I tried to emancipate my son, but because he wasn't working at that time, he was getting his own SSI, he couldn't be emancipated. So juvenile probation, had to basically agree to him living on his own with his girlfriend and their baby then when Jaden was born. But, they reminded me, well, you're legally responsible, for him. Well, I knew that. I'm his mother. Hello, But my son didn't go around making a habit out of getting in trouble either. So I wasn't, completely worried about that. I was more concerned about them, adjusting to a baby and everything as compared to him losing his cool with a teacher, So where Section 8 really got on my nerves, they wanted me to downsize from a 3-bedroom to a 2-bedroom, and I went to the office and I presented them with paperwork from my son's probation office, which stated that even though, we were all in agreement that he could live with the girlfriend at his address, I was still legally responsible, and that if, the situation ever warranted it, that my son could come back home, being that he was under 18. So, in other words, I needed to maintain that bedroom for him, if he ever needed to come back home, or if he ever wanted to, even if it was just temporary. Well, Section 8 didn't want to hear anything about that. And they decided that, no, you need to downsize. And then if he comes back, you have to get another 3-bedroom. So, in other words, I could have moved maybe 2-3 times in 1 year to accommodate what might have went on in my son's life. That's ridiculous. And I just flat out refused. I said, no. I'm still legally obligated until that boy turns 18 to have a room for him. That's a law. There's the statutes and everything regarding all that on that piece of paper. You want to go look them up and read them online, you're more than welcome to. So I'm in my right by saying no, I am not going to downsize. At least not until he turns 18. So by then, I just really got fed up of Section 8. And that's when I basically just got off of it and got a regular house. Oh, I hate when Cortana does that. I really do. I don't know why it does that. So, I mean, Section 8 is a good program, but, it has its downside, too. For example, a situation like that. Not something that occurs every day, but, just to think that a person is just going to up and move in a situation like that, it was a specific situation. And really, for 6 months, it wasn't going to make a big difference that I lived there, because my son was 17 and a half at that time. Complete, just no, they just didn't want to deal with it, didn't want to, nothing. And when I did move, they sent me a letter that I owed my landlord, I don't know, $500 and some or something, because I, broke the contract. I said I was moving. And I turned around and I said something like, I lived in this apartment 10 years, and the only time something got fixed was when it busted and needed to be fixed. And I said, everything is outdated in this apartment, so you're crazy if you think I am paying $575. You know, like, no, I'm leaving. Goodbye. Well, when I tried to get into a disabled high-rise years ago, that came back to haunt me. That I owed that money to that landlord. And I said, first of all, I moved out when half of the month was over. I didn't stay there an extra full month, so I technically would have only owed half of that money. And I said I would have been happy to give it to him after I was out. I certainly didn't have it while I was in the process of moving, you know, but I did contact him after I moved and was willing to, you know, send him a money order down the road, and he never answered me or contacted me back, so I didn't pay him the half that I figured I owed him. That was on him, not me. So Section 8 has its drawbacks too. I mean, as far as the money goes, yes, it is good. It puts more money in your pocket. But then again, there's a lot of rules and regulations with Section 8 as well. Same thing with the disabled housing and the senior housing. And as I've often said to people, I'm not ready to give up the things that I enjoy and my freedoms to live in a cracker box apartment. No. If I would do anything, I would put my name in for one of the cute little houses, but they are more for elderly. You have to be in your 60s for them. I probably should put an app in when I'm maybe 57, 58, because there's a couple of year waiting list for them. They are cute. You have your own little yard, you could have your own little garden. There is security overnight. A nice quiet area close to malls, buses. So, you know, not a bad area to live in per se. But again, you know, there's just like so many rules and regulations with that. It's just ridiculous. And I think one of the things that cracks me up is you could have one bad recommendation from a landlord, and that will be held over your head like you commit a crime. And yet they're supposed to be so strict about who they leave in subsidized housing. And yet over the years I would look at people and be like, you were in jail for a felony. I thought you can't be in public housing if you're a felon. Well, how the hell are you living there? You know, I often question situations like that, and I thought, well, how the hell does that person get to live there? And yet, you know, I can't. God forbid, you know, I have this bad landlord reference, and ooh, that's the end of the damn world. How many people in their life get a bad landlord reference? Probably at least one time, whether they're young, or maybe just a landlord that was a jerk. Is it really the end of the world that landlord gives you a bad reference? No, if he's the only one. Not the first person that happens to, and won't be the last. But public housing acts like it's, God forbid, the end of the world, you know? So, I mean, there's a lot of give and take with Section 8. With food stamps and with public housing. These are probably the two things that do affect a lot of seniors. What a lot of people don't realize is each time we get a cost of living increase, your food stamps will get cut by a few dollars to compensate for that. Now, I've wondered for years, how in the heck is it legal for one government program, Social Security, to give you something, and then food stamps, another government program, to take something away from you? And then Section 8, another program, government, raise your rent. How are they able to basically all do that, and how is that legal? I've never been able to understand that. I've often questioned that for years, and nobody really ever gave me an answer for it. But that, in and of itself, often made my head spin too. why even bother giving people a cost of living increase if you're going to cut their stamps and you're going to raise their rent? You know, they're not gaining anything. They're probably a few dollars worse than they were before they got the darn thing. So, like, really. So, as I said, I hate the welfare system as a whole because of how it is so quick to cut a person's throat and penalize you for doing what you think is the right thing, working. And I don't understand why that program was ever set up the way that it was. As I said, tapering people down from their benefits and giving people a grace period would probably be more beneficial, and possibly people would stay self-supporting longer term if they were able to gradually, tongue-tied, absorb, the different changes and work with them. It's a lot easier to do it in smaller steps than to have everything yanked out from under you and you have nothing but having to pay out money, and then when you add everything up and realize you don't have enough money, you didn't earn enough money to cover everything that you're expected to cover. If the government would actually try that approach, it might actually work. As sure as that couldn't hurt as compared to like what they do now. And as far as insurance, as I said, I don't have Medicare, I have Medicaid. And for the longest time I was glad I didn't have Medicare because I got, friends that are on it and at times have had, arguments with their doctors and with Medicare for not wanting to pay for things. My mom has that problem. Everybody knows my mom needs a hearing aid, but my son said that Medicare won't pay for one for her, and they're not cheap. So my mom never got one because my son said she just doesn't have that money to do so. And with her dementia, she really can't sit and fill out papers and apply for any kind of help with it because she just may not be of the right frame of mind at the moment you put them papers in front of her to actually put, the proper information down. So I'm glad, for the moment that I don't deal with that problem. But now there's been so many changes with Medicaid that I'm starting to question where medical assistance and the different insurances in that are going. And I think part of the problem and a big part of the blame has to do with the opioid crisis. And that's all I'm going to say, because that is a separate video in and of itself. I could probably talk for an hour about that topic. But let's just say that when changes came through, with people's prescriptions with that, is when a lot of insurances really started. Ronnie's awake, getting ready for work. He just woke up. Supper's over there.
I'm good.
You're not hungry? Okay.
Not for that.
The sausage and the broccoli and rice?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you straight eat when I get home.
Okay. What do you want for breakfast tomorrow? You're doing overtime, aren't you?
Tonight's Thursday, right? And Friday?
Yeah.
No.
No?
No. Even tomorrow night's a normal shift for me. No.
Okay.
No, I already did my overtime.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I don't know. I'll make some French toast. Oh, we don't have bread. Shoot.
I stick around there by my dog.
Okay, you need to grab the rent money anyway.
Yeah.
Alright, sorry about that, guys.
Okay.
But if I don't talk to him like right now, he's going to get ready for work. I'm doing a video and I may forget to ask him or tell him something, so I apologize. But anyway, so like medical assistance has
I
made
need my coffee first.
so many changes that I really question what they're doing. And it all started with my gel shots for my knees. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Synvisc. It is big needles. They're about this big. A little bit wider than the needles you get for like a cortisone shot. I'm not gonna lie, they do hurt for a moment. It puts this like liquid into your knee joints, which over the course of a few days settles, and it provides a cushion so that like when you bend your knees and that you don't have the bone scraping and rubbing together, things like that. For someone like me whose knees are worn out basically, it's beneficial and a blessing, to be honest. And when my rheumatologist first suggested it to me, I was all game for it because cortisone shots were not helping. And when they did x-rays, he had said, well, you have the start of arthritis and basically your knees are worn out. And what I would feel, you know, after walking a lot was just the rubbing and grinding and creepy feeling and creepy sound. So the gel shots were wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. So in November of last year, my insurance, Geisinger, sent my rheumatologist a letter saying that they were not going to pay for my injections in January of 2020. But they did not send that information to my rheumatologist, so I contacted him about it, and he said, well, they haven't contacted me. So mid-December, he put through the paperwork for me, for all appearances, to get the shot mid-January. So I'm overdue by a month now, or I will be on the 15th. And beginning of January, I was told that the insurance would not pay for it. And my rheumatologist was going to have to appeal it. And then there was a prior authorization and prior certification, all this ridiculous paperwork, which is just such a waste. Paperwork. So it's been a month. I still didn't get a shot, any kind of shot yet. I've been bugging his office every day for weeks now. Not every day, but every week now. At least twice a week. Well, what's going on? And they asked me, like, you know, what's going on? I said about the swelling I'm getting a lot and more frequently. And my rheumatologist feels it has something to do with the fact that I've not gotten those shots. In the meantime, they said, you know, well, something about, you know, the letter you got. And I said, what letter? I didn't get one piece of mail from my insurance so far in 2020. I even requested a copy of the new patient handbook, actual physical handbook. I didn't even get that. Matter of fact, I called them back today and said, I've been waiting 3 weeks for my patient handbook. Where is it? I didn't get it. Oh, well, you know, we'll be happy to issue you another one. Yeah, please do, because you probably never did the first one. So, yeah, I'm in the dark. And then most recently, I put through my pharmacy, automated for my scripts. Now, the one prescription, I always have to get a new script for every month, and that is my tramadol. Now, originally, I used to have a script of 120 pills. The insurance cut it to 112. That was all they would pay for. Well, when my family doctor retired, and I went with the new doctor, I voluntarily asked for a half of a full month script. I did not want to come across as a pill seeker or, you know, like this drug addict per se. And I didn't know how a new doctor was gonna, see me, or how his attitude was gonna be about medication. So, like I had figured, since I use pain meds more in the colder months and things of the year, like come the summertime and that, I don't take them anywhere near as often. So, knowing that, I figured, okay, I should be okay. And I don't need more than a half of my original month's script. 2 months, I was able to get a new script, get it filled, no problem. This time around, though, and I was supposed to get a letter about this, but I didn't either. This time around, the pharmacy says to me, oh, the insurance wouldn't pay for it, they want prior authorization. Okay, prior authorization for what? I'm dealing with swelling in my knees. I'm dealing with pain in my knees. If I walk a little too much, the back of my knees swell up. That hurts. The front of my knees will swell up. Because I don't have that shot anymore, that gel, as I said, to cushion inside my knee joints. Anybody that has dealt with any kind of knee pain, arthritis of the knees, knows what I'm talking about. It doesn't tickle. I don't know how in the world my grandmother dealt with it, because it's horrible. On top of that, I quite frequently have the pain in my tender spots on my neck. That is my fibro. Lyrica has never touched that. And if I overdo it, like when I go shopping, if I have too much in my cart, if I don't take a rest at times on my way home, I will have severe pains in my shoulders, in my neck, from dragging a cart. That is fibro pain. My family doctor verified that. He had thought maybe that blood vessels were laying weird and sent me for a specific test to check for that, only to found out that no, everything was fine. It's my fibro. So I have my own aches and pains. Thank goodness I'm not a chronic pain patient, but nonetheless, I'm not, a drug addict. I'm not a pill popper. I don't have a history of medication, problems like that. I don't have a history of, going around seeking pills from everybody and, any place. No. So, to go through all this nonsense over something that, to be quite honest, is not even an opioid. Yes, the government classified it as an opioid because there are people that have gotten addicted to it. I don't know how, but some people would get addicted probably to horse shit, I guess, if it tasted good or smelled good, to be honest. I don't know. I just love the way now how, everything, God forbid, all of a sudden, like, oh, it could be addictive to a very small population. I'm not one of them. And I've argued this with a pharmacist, actually in CVS years ago. I said something about, the opioid thing on it, and I said, why? It's not an opioid. Well, it's classified as an opioid. I said, just because it's classified doesn't mean chemical compound-wise it's an opioid. I said, my son is a certified in Pennsylvania and Arizona pharmaceutical tech who told me that tramadol is synthetic and it's not a true opioid. So you can argue the point, that basing everything on opioid. I said, just because the government slapped that tag on it doesn't mean that it is. I'm going to believe, I said, my son, who went through school very, recently, just like 3 years prior, to that conversation, I said, I'm going to believe my son, who is certified in both Pennsylvania and Arizona, that is not a true opioid. And I even told my family doctor, the female doctor I had that retired years ago, I said, I cannot take like true opioids. I was given OxyContin years ago, I threw them up. I was given Vicodins, I threw them up. The only pain medication I was able to take that stayed down was Percocets or Darvocets. Everything else I threw up. Threw up horrible. Threw up. Oh, disgusting. Come to find out, talking with my female cousins, they have the same problem. They could never take oxycodone either. Couldn't take OxyContin. Couldn't take Vicodins. Same problem. So I remember mentioning that to someone from Geisinger once. And I said, what does that mean when several members, like in a family like that, seem to have this predisposition that we all have the same issue? There's certain medications none of us can take. We just can't tolerate them. And it turns out that, my son Bobby, when he was younger, he couldn't take like OxyContin's oxycodone either, and he threw up Vicodin as well. So he may be like that too. I don't know for sure. But Geisinger was very, very interested in that, and I agreed for them to do blood work to analyze and try to figure out what it was within my body that did not tolerate things like that, medication like that. So I would say it's a pretty good statement to make that I wouldn't be a heroin addict anyway, because anything that is compounded similarly to that or produces that same effect, I can't, my body won't tolerate it. So yeah, just interesting. Maybe there's other folks out there like that. I'd be curious, if there is. So, touch on food stamps for a moment. Food stamps are a good program, and I know there is a lot of fraud. There's a lot of fraud though within the whole welfare system. And yes, I remember back in the days, and this was kind of funny now, as I said in the last video, like about the media would just grab a hold of a story, some welfare queen owned 2 cars, owned her own home, got benefits for 7 kids in 3 states, whatever, lived high off the hog. They're the exception, they're not the general rule. So I remember one of the reporters in my local newspaper actually was looking for single mothers on welfare to share with them for a week, how they budget their money, what they buy, where they go, what they do. I was one of the people, and it was an interesting series that this reporter did, because myself and 4 other women, he spent a week with each of us, talking to us every day. Where we went, what appointments we had, where we shopped, what we did, what we bought, things like that. How did you pay your rent? How did, everything like that. Whether or not you had worked, why were you back on welfare, that kind of thing. And it was really, really good to be able to tell, your side of it and what it was really, really like. So there's a lot of people out there, have this concept that everyone on, Social Security or disability or something gets hundreds of dollars worth of food stamps. No, they don't. I'm fortunate in what I do get, but I'm the first to say that they don't last. And they certainly wouldn't last me if I actually went with like all organic food. I'd be out of stamps in 2 weeks. I have checked out enough prices, even in a store like Aldi's, to know that if I bought more organic things, my stamps would be gone in 2 weeks. Which is why when I try to make meals, I try to do like everything in moderation. Good night, honey. Call me.
I will, on my first break.
Alrighty. So, I believe everything in moderation is a good way to go. I love seafood. I would be the first to buy a lot more of it if I could afford it, but I can't. But seafood is good for you and healthy. And I think the one thing I cannot wrap my brain around is healthy food is so much more expensive than junk. I understand growing things organically and this, it costs more, but if there is this nationwide problem, quote unquote, with obesity and they want people to eat healthier, can't the FDA do something and regulate prices? I find that hard to believe that they can't do something, intervene in some way, because the junk food should be more expensive than the healthy food. Fruits and vegetables should not cost 3 times what a burger and fries at Wendy's is going to cost. Again, I understand what's involved in growing these things. And I know a little from first-hand experience of having my own garden. You obviously it's work. You need to take care of a garden. But still, why is it that junk just comes across, so much cheaper? Now, I very seldom eat fast food. 1, I don't have all kind of money to eat out. And 2, the rare occasion that I do, it's usually something like chicken nuggets, maybe like a flavored coffee, fries. More often than not, if I have a choice, I would prefer Subway or maybe Sonic over McDonald's. Arby's sometimes, in the mood for a good roast beef and Swiss hoagie or the French onion dip. I know a lot of fast food's not good for you. I don't even drink a lot of soda. Matter of fact, I'm probably lucky if I drink a can of soda 3 times a month. Kid you not. I very seldom buy it. I think in the summer maybe I buy it more because of cookouts. But on a regular basis, no, I don't buy soda that often. I really don't. I prefer flavored water, iced tea, coffee, or tea. So I don't know what the government thinks per se as far as combating this big obesity crisis that they say there is in the U.S. and then cutting people's stamps. I mean, there's some people that are lucky if they get $15, $20 a month. When people are faced with the situation of like paying a bill or buying food, paying for medication or buying food, that's a really hard choice to make, and we all have to eat. What do you do? Really, what do you do? That's a terrible situation for anyone to be in. Now, they're kicking around the idea of drug testing food stamp recipients. Personally, I don't have a problem with it because what's going to show up in my system? Nothing that I don't have a prescription for, put it that way. But it lumps everyone in that category that all food stamp recipients are drug addicts. They're, they're shady. They're drug abusers. And I don't like being lumped into a category that I don't deserve to be lumped into, and I shouldn't be lumped into. But just because of, the media frenzy and everything, and again, back with this crisis, which is another video for another time, that's causing so much hell with insurance, with people's prescriptions. It's just unbelievable, completely unbelievable. And I won't go into more on that, just because, as I said, that's a separate topic in and of itself for another video. But again, when everyone is like suspected and lumped into this category of you're all suspect, and you haven't done anything to be, suspected, but it's like automatically assumed almost that you are, that's a heck of a horrible feeling. I don't even know, what to say. I know, welfare system is broken and it needs to be, fixed, changed in some way. I think, though, honestly, giving people a grace period and this trickling down, tapering effect of gradually easing them off of benefits into self-sufficiency, in the long run, would be more long-lasting and more beneficial to the welfare system and to the families that actually get an opportunity to adjust to the changes gradually, as compared to being basically kicked out the door and left to fend for themselves, per se. Now, before I end this video, I just want to say I had a horrible experience. I learned about it after the fact. When my boys were young, I was working that summer as a sewer. And when the company went on vacation, I went to work for a different sewing factory as a presser part-time. Found out I was not good at pressing. Yeah, I'm much better at sewing than I was at pressing. Nope, didn't like pressing. But apparently, because I made maybe like 25 cents more at that job, something happened that my children didn't have medical coverage for like 2 months. I never got a letter about it, never got any kind of notification about it. So I guess it was August, and they were going for booster shots for school checkups. And the pediatrician's wife took me aside and asked me, why didn't my kids have medical coverage for 2 months? And I was just looking there like, what are you talking about? And there was a slip that used to print up on this machine when they ran everyone's medical card years ago. And apparently for all 3 of my sons, it came up that I think it was from like a May to July or somewhere in that time frame, they were uncovered because of what I earned, which apparently was only by a few dollars anyway. But the fact that I was not notified of it really made me angry. Because what if, God forbid, something had happened, one of my kids got really sick, had to go in the hospital, and to find out that your child doesn't have medical coverage? So I was livid about that. And I remember calling my caseworker up that day, and I said, how could you fail to tell me? Oh, well, that was months ago. Well, it doesn't matter, that was months prior. the fact of the matter is, my kids were uncovered. I wasn't aware of it. And I would have found out the hard way if one of my kids had to go to the doctors for something, or, there was an emergency situation, and then I'm left in shock, and I'm left wondering, how the hell am I going to pay for this? So, yeah, the welfare system does not often, keep up with the proper letters and everything. Oh, but you have to return forms in timely fashion. You'll be penalized no end if you don't, without a valid excuse. But if they lose things, that's okay. It's your fault. And maybe a letter got lost in the mail, but if you use that as an excuse with something you have to send them, oh no, that's not a good enough excuse. So I just hope that for folks who have never been on any of these programs, Section 8, medical assistance, food stamps, that they have a better understanding that while they are beneficial, they don't give people what I call a fair chance of getting off when they want to get off. Pulling the rug out, the best analogy I could think of, is not the way to make people self-sufficient. That's the flaw in the system. Now, I didn't touch on TANF or public assistance, only because I was not actually on cash assistance for very long when my children were younger, because I did when my son was old enough to go to all-day kindergarten. I went back to work. My experience with welfare as a single person without children under 18 was interesting. I was on it while I was waiting on my third disability appeal. And I remember I was getting, I think, $102.50, I think it was, every 2 weeks. How do you afford a place with that small of an income? How do you even rent a room from someone for that small amount? That was a challenge because I was homeless at the time. And that's when me and my ex, we were together at the time. We were renting a room off of his sister-in-law. So the two of us chipped in, and we would give her $100 every 2 weeks. We each coughed up $50. But by myself, I couldn't have done that. I would have had nothing. I wouldn't even have been able to take a bus to a doctor's appointment because I wouldn't have had it. Where they came up with that amount for a single person is beyond me, because the figuring had to be very outdated, because what in the hell could you really do with $102.50 every 2 weeks? But at least it was something, that you had some money for yourself. When Pennsylvania eliminated that, that was a little bit of a safety net for folks who were in limbo like I was at the time, waiting on my disability. Now that category was eliminated. I know there are some states that do still have it, but even back then there should have been restrictions on it. I mean, I had been in and out of the hospital, I had just had a heart attack, this and that. My reasoning for being on it was much different than, some lazy person who just didn't want to get a job. I had a valid reason. I was on my third appeal. So that really was my only other option at that time. To say that, some people lived on it. Well, I don't really know how they lived on it, because think about it. $205 a month. $206 a month. And this was back, say 10 years ago. rents were a little cheaper than what they are now, but still, you couldn't get a room for $200 a month. There were people charging more than that just to rent a room in their own home, for God's sakes. So how did you keep a roof over your head? Not unless you were chipping in with several other people. It was the only way you would have been able to do it, as me and my ex had to do, because neither one of us could afford our own place on our own. Another thing that I used to think was odd with like cash assistance when you had children back in the day was you had to file for child support. And they would only give you a pass-through check of $50. And I often wondered, if a person was paying several $100s a month in child support and all you were getting is $50, wouldn't it have made more sense for welfare to say, you know, we're just going to let you get the child support, give you, you know, the medical, and you just get the cash, because you'd be doing better for yourself, you getting the money, than just getting $50. I had often thought, you know, that was illogical. If someone's, you know, ex-boyfriend, ex-husband, whatever, is paying $500 a month in child support, you're just getting $50. Where does the rest of it go? Especially if you're only getting an extra, say, $60 in food stamps for that child. And, I mean, I don't know how you would estimate, you know, medical benefits, but sometimes, like, you know, what welfare would be spending on a child is a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of child support a parent would be paying. I never understood why welfare didn't just say, okay, you know, you're going to do better getting the child support for this child or these children. You know, we're just going to give you the medical. You would do a lot better getting, you know, the child support. But no, they wouldn't do that. I never understood that, you know, that aspect of it either. As I said, there's, you know, a lot of flaws with every system. But definitely, I don't think pulling a rug out from under people is a way to go either. People have to be transitioned gradually into a life change, a different way of living. It doesn't always end well. When, you know, these things happen and in a matter of 2 weeks, bam, people have nothing. Because children are the one that suffer. And the welfare system as a whole fails to realize that. They just figure, great, you're working, you're set. You know, no comprehension that you could lose that job. No comprehension that, you know, you could get really, really sick and not be able to work. Or the job go out of business and you can't collect because you didn't work long enough to collect. That was a situation that happened to me once many years ago too. I had a job briefly and the place shut down. I had no choice but to go back on cash assistance, and I wasn't eligible to collect because I hadn't earned enough to collect. So, you know, different situations happen. Everyone's story is different. And I do feel bad for, you know, people that grew up in a family situation where generation after generation after generation were on welfare, because it is a good feeling to earn a paycheck. And at some point that needs to stop. It was never meant to be like that. But also, it needs to be revamped because realistically, you know, you need to acknowledge that cutting people cold turkey is not a fair way. And also, I don't think morally it's a right way to help families become self-sufficient. But again, that's just my opinion, but I think it makes a lot more sense. But I'm sure some politician out there would argue the point with me. But, for folks who have this mindset that, you know, people on Social Security or SSI live high on the hog. No, we don't. I mean, I have it better than, you know, some people do, obviously. I wouldn't be able to put it this way. If I had this apartment myself, I could pay the rent. I could pay my electric. I would have my cell phone. I would have no internet because I couldn't afford it. And if I didn't have internet, I wouldn't have my YouTube channel. I probably wouldn't have my pets because I wouldn't be able to afford food, litter, nothing for them, because I wouldn't have like hardly any extra money left over. Sure, I'd have a roof over my head and everything, but it's not wrong for people to want more than just getting by. That's not being greedy. That's not being selfish. That is just wanting to improve your, you know, your quality of life a little bit. Not saying you want to be, you know, rich or anything like that. Hi, baby. Just saying that, you know, you want a more stable standard of living a little bit. I, you know, said to Ronnie the other day, actually, I said, I can't wait to actually be able to have earned money from YouTube down the road. I said, I want to celebrate. I want to get some takeout food. I want to go over to Freeland. And I want to do it on a night that my oldest son either doesn't have work or, you know, is done early. And I said we're going to get a bottle of wine. And I'm going to order some food from a pizzeria over there that I really, really like. And I'm going to celebrate my good fortune with my family for my first, you know, paycheck from YouTube. I think it's something definitely that is great, and, you know, I would definitely want to share it with my family. So, but in all honesty, I can't wait to actually, like, go in a grocery store with coupons and some cash and be able to, like, actually go grocery shopping and buy food and not pay for them with food stamps. You know, I look forward to that. So, if me having a channel down the road, you know, enables me to not be dependent on stamps, then that's a good thing. I'm accomplishing something by working my channel. If me having a channel, you know, say, earns me, just say hypothetically, $200 a month. That's a good thing. That's $200 I did not have before. Sense of pride and satisfaction, I earned that money. You know, I make the videos, I record them, I edit them, bim bam boom, I earned that. Not a handout, I earned it. It's a good feeling. So, my logic has always been that having, you know, an extra avenue of income is important, because one income cannot cut it today. And there may have been a time, maybe back in the day, where, you know, one income was enough to run a household. Not anymore. Sometimes, more often than not, two incomes are not enough. I was, just for the heck of it, looking... Well, actually, when I was doing some research, and it was actually about that firebombing that occurred over here on Cleveland Street years ago. I had inadvertently typed in my address, and a real estate site came up. I meant to type in that address, 626. And it showed a picture of the neighbor's backyard over here, so it was the wrong yard, and I had to move it up a little bit to where, like, I was actually looking at, the backyard of the building. And, I found out, like, that way when my landlord bought the property and everything. So that was a little interesting. And I discovered the value of the property and all. So, like, I, got an idea, like, what he roughly takes in renting apartments. Yuda's apartment is $50 more, though, because she has a whole side of the basement to herself. Whereas on this side of the building, technically the basement is for everyone. For whatever reason, the way it's set up on that side, she has that whole side. So she pays $50 more. So, like, looking at some of the rents now, just for, the hell of it, through, like, real estate agencies and everything, they have gone up even the past 2 years since I have lived here. And it's horrifying to see $800, $875. I mean, there was a time that if an apartment was like $1,000, it was like an executive type of apartment. No, there's apartments that are going for $1,000 very much in, like, West Hazleton and in residential areas. And for the life of me, I cannot understand what is so great about them that they're charging that much. It, like, puzzles me. I don't understand it. Where does that leave people like me on a fixed income who are not even on a waiting list for any kind of subsidized housing? With these goofy rents going up and up and up, and of course it doesn't help that the property taxes in Hazleton go up and up and up too. Where does that leave people like me, or, people on SSD, that our incomes don't increase to compensate with the cost of everything else going up? That is why I feel raising the minimum wage is going to backfire and hurt people more than help them. Because unless there is caps on utilities and caps on rent increases, people aren't going to be any better off than they were earning a lower wage. Everything is going to be increased, and people are not going to have a fighting chance to put extra money that they earn to any use that's going to benefit them, like saving it or getting a car or, maybe moving into a better home. Nope, everybody's going to have their hand out. And that's why raising the minimum wage without caps on things, even for at least a few years, it's not going to work. It's going to harm people more than hurt them. It's going to backfire on them. I've read enough articles about it in other states where, people have pretty much said that very same thing. So, in the end, those of us that are on a fixed income figure out our own ways to try to earn a few extra dollars, try to make your money stretch. The system for, like, public welfare and that is broken. nobody is going to argue that. As I said, I think part of the problem is the way they just cut people off of benefits. And when it comes to like Social Security and disability, I think there should be a little more flexibility in being able to earn money part-time. I mean, I know they say that you can work, but it seems a lot of people I know who did, work part-time wound up losing it. So I think if you're, for example, say working from home, that's a lot different than like physically getting up and going out the door, to a job. A big difference there. A difference, in environment and in what you would be doing. But I don't think people should be penalized as much for, even like working part-time, because let's face it, realistically, ask any one of these welfare caseworkers, ask a worker in the Social Security office, if you had to live on $771 a month for a month, how would you do it? Could you do it? They'd probably look at you and say, get the hell out of here, I never could. But millions of Americans do have to, like everybody, well, shall we say, it's nice, congressmen and all that get to vote themselves raises. Well, geez, all of us that are on Social Security now, we would love to vote ourselves a raise, don't you think, guys? Let's vote ourselves a raise that we get $250 some extra dollars every month, bring us up closer to $1,000. Then that would help our standard of living a little bit. Yeah, right, in our dreams, right? So yeah, at least if you can't agree on some things I say, we can agree on this. That definitely systems need to be changed and updated, because the world and the economy now is so much different than when Social Security was first instituted, when welfare and all that came into being. And I don't think realistically these programs have adapted with the times to actually help people. I mean, existing is one thing, but people deserve to have a life, not an existence. But again, that's just my opinion. Well, guys, for those of you who maybe did not have an idea how the welfare system works and Social Security works, I hope you have a little bit better understanding. And, if you have experiences to share, I'd love to hear about them in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. And you can always tell when Handsome here finished eating that, because he always has to clean those little pearly white paws. Has to have clean white paws. Oh my goodness if he doesn't. I'm sorry, I'm talking about you. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Your whiskers tickle my nose, buddy. Oh my gosh. They tickle my nose so bad. Thank you so much again for watching. Have a great evening. Take care. And I will see you real soon. Bye.